Rachel.
Tony.
Margaret.
Rodney.
Tara.
Oh, I said it was Aileen. No one heard you say anything.
Tara. Dawn.
Helen.
Ted Rodney. Two of you. John.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I have a chance, I do actually know quite a lot of those, a chance of remembering others. And I'm Ruth, I'm your local development worker. So I'm employed by Britain Union Meeting to support Quaker communities to thrive, whatever that means. And I cover all meetings, all local meetings in Kent and Sussex, and I'm also in the Surrey and Hampshire border area meeting.
Sorry.
And that's about 36 local meetings that I have responsibility. I don't have responsibility for, but I have responsibility for supporting Thrive. So what I've been asked to do this afternoon now, you're right, Ellie.
No, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you at the clock. No. Whatever.
The clock stopped.
But this one hasn't.
Yeah.
All right. I've been asked to talk about Quaker structures and decision making. I've already had a request to start from the basics, and that is actually what I'm intending to do. I'm going to assume that nobody knows anything about any Quaker structures or any Quaker decision making, more or less.
Make decisions.
That's what I've heard. So I'm going to start with Quaker structures, and I normally do this with a presentation on the laptop, but just felt easier and more personal to do it on a flip chart today. But I haven't drawn out a flip chart before, so it might take a bit longer than I thought, but we should be okay. So, starting from the very beginning, here, these blue dots. No, you don't need to be able to see them, don't worry. I put some blue dots on the flip chart. These are groups of Quakers. Each individual dot is maybe a Quaker or two, and they're grouped together and they're in local meetings. As we know, here we are in a local meeting. Now, I'm just going to make these blobs a little bit bigger. So these are local meetings now. These are no longer people, they're now local meetings. And there are quite a lot of them, we hope. This is why I want to do it on a presentation because it takes a long. Lots of local meetings, different sizes, different shapes, in meeting houses or not in meeting houses as the case may be. They're your local meetings. As you also probably know, sort of hope you know, those local meetings are grouped together like this, and these are our area meetings. You'll notice I've left out a local meeting here. There is actually now a local meeting which, well, it is part of an area meeting, but which is completely online. So there's one that is recognised as a local meeting, and it's in Wales, and it's completely online. But there's also Lighthouse Epilogue, which is not part of an area meeting. So you know, they're not all in area meetings, but for the most part, local meetings are in area meetings. And then I also hope you know this, that area meetings, all the area meetings in Britain are part of Britain Union Meeting, and that's the red line. So they're all part of Britain Union Meeting. You're not something that's completely separate from that. The area meetings hold charitable status. Local meetings don't exist in any legal way, but area meetings hold the charitable status. And then here, there are other yearly meetings, and perhaps some overlap, and we get visitors from other yearly meetings. So if you go to the yearly meeting in wherever it's held each year, there are always visitors from yearly meetings that are from other countries. So there's some overlap. Quakers are not just the yearly meeting, they exist all over the world.
Can we ask questions as we go
Please
along?
do, yeah.
So may I ask, where does Woodbrook fit? Because I use the online, because I'm not well enough.
Yeah.
I've used the online worship and also various of the group things quite frequently. So where does that fit?
That's a very good question. This
Oh,
presentation, no, it's great. This presentation was first put together well before COVID, actually. So online worship didn't really exist. Woodbrook holds online worship, as you know. Those people who worship regularly, for example, on Wednesday morning or wherever, have tended to form a little community, but they're not recognised at the moment as ways of belonging. That will probably, hopefully, change at some point.
Sorry, folks.
No, it's great. You need to ask those questions. So here we are, Britain Yearly Meeting, other yearly meetings. And then these little red blobs are Friends who are members of Young Friends General Meeting. And Young Friends General Meeting is a recognised part of the structures of Britain Yearly Meeting for friends who are between 18 and 35. You don't have to belong to it if you're between 18 and 35, but they have their own business meetings, they send representatives to various parts of the decision-making structure. They are recognised as part of the Quaker structure, but they are distributed around our local meetings. And then in each area meeting, I'm putting a little M in each area meeting, and that is the meeting for sufferings representative. So every area meeting has a representative to Meeting for Sufferings, which is a historical name and came from the days when friends who were being persecuted, the list of those under sufferance or suffering was a record was kept, and that was Meeting for Sufferings. What it's developed into now is part of the decision-making structures of Yearly Meeting, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But this simple structure is very complicated. But every area meeting has a representative on Meeting for Sufferings, and the idea then is that local meeting decision making feeds into area meeting decision making, and that is fed up to Meeting for Sufferings, not up to Meeting for Sufferings, fed into Meeting for Sufferings, and then Meeting for Sufferings decisions come back out to area and local meetings. But it is the expectation, the way it's set up, is that the things that Meeting for Sufferings make decisions about come from local meetings and friends in local meetings. Okay, so there's more. In each of the area meetings, not in each of the area meetings, in some of the area meetings and elsewhere, there are trustees of Britain Yearly Meeting. So Britain Yearly Meeting is a charity in its own right, and actually it's a charity that employs me. And the trustees of that charity are just friends like you in their local meetings. They're not anybody else, they're not somebody different, they're not them. They are friends who worship with a local meeting and are offering service to Britain Yearly Meeting as trustees. And then the other thing is, I'm putting some small t's in these area meetings now, and there are remarkably few and not enough. These are your area meeting trustees. So once again, they're not people who are somebody else. They are people, they're friends who are in their local meetings, worshipping with their local meetings, and they're offering service to the area meeting as trustees. In theory, they would be appointed in the same way as your local meeting roles. They would be appointed for a triennium, and after that triennium, the theory is that they would then lay down that service and somebody else in the meeting would take up that service. However, what area meetings are increasingly finding is that there aren't people to serve as trustees, or anything else actually. And that is leading to some difficulties in friends having to serve for much longer than they want to, and much longer than actually I don't like the word should, but probably much longer than they should. And that's something that the society needs to address, really, that all roles need to be considered, because none of them should be more than one triennium or possibly two. So that is what the Quaker structure looks like in a kind of whistle-stop, kind of quick, colourful presentation. But I think what the point of it, when one of my colleagues first kind of devised it, was to say that Quakers, the Quaker way is that friends on the bench, if you like, friends in local meetings, are the people who make the decisions. They're the people who serve as trustees. They're the people who serve on central committees. That's actually something else I could put in here. My work is, so I'm in the department that I sit in, my job sits in, is Quaker Life. And what we do in Quaker Life is decided or overseen by Quaker Life Central Committee. Central Committee is friends like you. You could serve on Central Committee, and the decisions that are made by Britain Yearly Meeting once a year are then, if they're related to the work that Quakers do, will be passed to the relevant Central Committee, which at the moment is Quaker Peace and Social Witness Central Committee, and Quaker Life Central Committee, and then the friends who are serving on those committees determine the work that the employees do. Does that make sense?
Could you just run through the titles, designated titles of each of those spots on your...
Yes, okay. These are local meetings, okay? And the local meetings sit within area meetings, okay? Within area meetings and possibly kind of sometimes not within area meetings, you have friends who belong to Young Friends General Meeting and their event spots. The little green M, is a representative to Meeting for Sufferings, and there's one of those in each area meeting, or should be. The black capital T, is the Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees, and the small orange T is the area meeting trustees. Okay. The big red line, that's Britain Yearly Meeting.
A what?
Britain Yearly Meeting.
Britain.
Britain Yearly Meeting. And this red line is some other yearly meeting. So, for example, Belgium Yearly Meeting or Ireland Yearly Meeting. And there's some overlap, but they sit kind of alongside us, if you like.
Could you just explain the way that Meetings for Sufferings makes decisions independently from Britain Yearly Meeting?
So there's some, thank you. So there are some decisions that can be made by Meeting for Sufferings. Some decisions about the way some of the work is done, or things like, for example, they recently took a decision about friends serving on central committees no longer have to be in membership, so they can take decisions like that. But some decisions have to be taken by yearly meeting, decisions about the direction in which Quakers want to go. For example, things like the same-sex marriage recognition, the decision that was made a few years ago about Quakers wanting to make reparations for the slave trade, and the one about in 2011 about wanting to be a sustainable community. So those.
So is it that it's almost like they make the interim decisions,
Yeah.
the housekeeping decisions more than what goes on at yearly meeting?
Yeah, that's a bit of a simplification, but yes, along those lines. So the big direction of Quakerism stuff happens at yearly meeting.
But it seems that sometimes it seems we're reading the reports, so some things could be done by yearly meeting. It's like they may not see it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
However, thank you for that. At the moment, yearly meeting meets once a year, and Meeting for Sufferings meets, I think it's gone down to 4 times a year in between. It used to be once a month, but not anymore. However, the last yearly meeting, a decision was made that Meeting for Sufferings over the next couple of years will be laid down, and we will be meeting as a yearly meeting, so anybody can go 4 times a year. And one of those will be kind of the main yearly meeting, but the other 3 will also be able to make those big decisions. So all those decisions, will be made can be made by anybody who wants to go to those meetings can. Does that give you
Regional meeting?
Oh, I've got that one, thanks. So there's another one. Just remind me of regional meeting. So in some areas, some area meetings are joined together in some formal or semi-formal way. For example, here we have regional meeting, which doesn't have any place in Quaker structures, but does bring area meetings around here together. There's also Quakers in Yorkshire, there's Quakers in Wales, there's Quakers in Scotland, which all have a general meeting or a regional meeting that brings those area meetings together, but they're not part of the Quaker decision-making structures, apart from Wales where it's all changed. I know, it's so simple. Is that clear? Is that as clear as you hope I'm going to make it? Yeah? Okay. Yes? Any more questions?
Could you just define the membership situation?
No. Yes, I can.
In the local meetings and area meetings, can you just make that explicit?
Yes. So we have, so any society, whatever it is, needs committed people to help it to run. And at the moment, we call that commitment membership. There's an old discussion going on about what membership actually is. But at the moment, if you feel like you would like to come into membership of a religious society of friends, then that has to go through your area meeting. So your membership of Quakers sits with area meeting, it doesn't sit with your local meeting, and it has to go through your area meeting. Was that what you wanted to know? Yeah. Okay. And at the moment, there's no central facility for belonging to Quakers in Britain, centrally. And part of the reason that is currently a challenge is because since we've had online meetings, and there's a recognition also that young people don't always fit into the area meeting kind of thing, there is some consideration of whether there's a way of holding membership somewhere other than in a particular area meeting. So that's also being considered at the moment. But at the moment, your membership is held in your area meeting.
I hear that in a court of law, Quakers don't need to swear on the Bible.
Yeah, nobody does, actually. But
Well,
it did start with Quakers.
Even the readout, I speak the truth.
So that started hundreds of years ago when Quakers said we don't swear an oath, because if we swear an oath, that suggests two standards of truth. You know, we speak the truth. We don't need to swear an oath because that's what we do. We're not going to say there's a different standard of truth in court of law. And so it is now legally recognised that if you wish to affirm, and instead of swearing an oath, then you can. You don't have to be a Quaker, and you don't actually have to be a Quaker to do that anymore. So anybody can affirm instead of swearing.
So that's just word of mouth now.
Well, you can say I speak the truth. I'm not going to swear an oath to say that because that is the way I speak. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, don't want to spend a whole time on structures because fascinating though they are. Let us think about Quaker decision making. I've got a set of cards, but I should have brought two and I've only got one, so I apologise. I'm going to ask you to possibly move around. So, let me just read you something first. So, Quaker decision making. How do we make decisions?
Slowly.
Oh, Aileen. Oh, gosh. So this is chapter 3. This is in chapter 3 of Quaker Faith and Practice, which is being revised, but let's not worry about that this minute. So, part 302 is entitled The Sense of the Meeting. In our meetings for worship, we seek through the stillness to know God's will for ourselves and for the gathered group. Our meetings for church affairs, in which we conduct our business, are also meetings for worship based on silence, and they carry the same expectation that God's guidance can be discerned if we're truly listening together and to each other, and are not blinkered by preconceived opinions. It is this belief that God's will can be recognised through the discipline of silent waiting, which distinguishes our decision-making process from the secular idea of consensus. We have a common purpose in seeking God's will through waiting and listening, believing that every activity of life should be subject to divine guidance. Now, whether or not you use the word God, the sense of that paragraph to me says the Quaker way of making decisions is not about us. It's about listening for something bigger than us. There's a lot more in here, I'm not going to read it all out. However, when we make decisions as Quakers, we talk about unity. We've already heard that we're not talking about the secular idea of consensus, we're talking about unity. And this is 306. The unity we seek depends on the willingness of us all to seek the truth in each other's utterances, on our being open to persuasion, and in the last resort, on a willingness to recognise and accept the sense of the meeting as recorded in the minute, knowing that our dissenting views have been heard and considered. We do not vote in our meetings because we believe that this would emphasise the divisions between differing views and inhibit the process of seeking to know the will of God. We must recognise, however, that a minority view may well continue to exist. When we unite with a minute, offered by our clerk, we express not a sudden agreement of everyone present with the prevailing view, but rather a confidence in our tried and tested way of seeking to recognise God's will. We act as a community whose members love and trust each other. We should be reluctant to prevent the acceptance of a minute which the general body of friends present feels to be right. So, we lay aside our own views, although we all obviously have them, but we wait in the silence to hear the truth, to hear truth come through us. And one of the things that we find in Quaker meeting for worship business is that if something has been said, there is no need to say it again. It's been said, it's been heard, it should be minuted. There is no need to say I agree with that or to say it again in a different way. And that can be different from a secular meeting where, you know, 5 people say the same thing, you go, you know, that's great. The more we hear, the more obvious it is. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to do an exercise around what a Quaker business meeting might look like, or what Quaker business method might look like. Yeah, Alan, you're in charge. But before that, let's just hear from you. Any particular, I mean, I've told you a bit already, but anything particular that you know or think happens in a Quaker meeting for worship for business that might or might not be different from a business meeting, if you like.
We bring together what the individual committees within the local meeting have met and talked about.
Okay.
We bring it into the meeting for worship for business to find out what the meeting as a whole think about, rather than discussing every little thing at the meeting for worship for business.
So, information from committees. I'm thinking also more about the actual process of the meeting, I think, as well.
Sorry, speak once.
Speak once, yeah.
Signed up.
Yeah.
Wait to be called back now.
Yeah, nice.
Can I just say that stand to speak causes the question mark around that, because that's exclusive rather than inclusive.
So perhaps a different way of saying it would be indicating you'd like to speak.
Yes, because I attend hastings regularly and I can't stand easily to speak.
Yeah, fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uphold the clerk.
Yeah.
Wait between ministries.
I think recognise that it is ministry as well.
Shall I recognise that it's a meeting for worship? That it's a meeting for worship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm unclear what uphold the clerks means.
Good question. What do you understand that to mean?
To hold clerks in the light throughout the meeting, to be quiet between people speaking. If the clerks are writing a minute, then just wait and not to talk while that's going on.
Yeah,
So,
I think particularly when the clerks are writing the minute, there's an expectation not that you sit and go on your phone or chat to the person next door, but actually, in fact, Angela Burnley, who's the clerk at Britain Union meeting, said the other day, "I'm asking you to uphold us friends. That means pray as hard as you can." So it's you're not sitting there just, "Oh, I'm going to tell what it's going to be," but you're really upholding them and praying that the minute comes out as for want of a better phrase, no, not for want of a better phrase, the best phrase, God's will. So,
What does it mean, wait to be called?
another good question, thank you. So the clerk will present an item to the meeting for the decision to start to be made. And if you feel led to minister on that matter, you would stand or put your hand up, whatever, indicate that you'd like to speak. It is then for the clerk to see who is standing and or indicating they'd like to speak, and it is for the clerk to then call you to speak, call individual friends to speak. And it is a misunderstanding to think that just because you've indicated you'd like to speak, that you will be invited to do so, because it's not always the case. And that was seen very clearly at Britain Union meeting this year, that actually more people will indicate that they're going to speak, that they'd like to speak, that they feel led to speak, they've tested their ministry, they've indicated they'd like to be called, and they're not called because there just isn't time. You can't do it. Anyway.
Would you sit down when somebody's asked to speak and then stand again
Yeah.
afterwards, so that, because sometimes it will be a case of they just said what you wanted to say anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, you get the item laid before the meeting, 3 people stand, one of them is called, the other 2 sit down, those on Zoom put their electronic hands down, the ministry is offered to the meeting, it is held in the silence, and then the way it works at the meeting is there's so many people, and probably should kind of really happen at local meeting level as well. The clerk will then indicate when they're ready to hear further ministry. And then, again, you test your ministry. Does it still need to be heard? And if the first person who's called said pretty much the sense of what you were going to say, you don't stand again. There's no need.
And this, we're only referring to these business type meetings, not the Sunday morning.
Yeah, this is meeting for worship for business. This is decision. This is making a decision. Yeah.
Business.
This is your business meeting, if you will.
Except that there may not be a decision. It has to be held over.
Absolutely, and that's Alan raises a good point. A decision may not be reached in any one meeting or any one matter in any one meeting for worship for business. If the meeting is not in unity, if friends cannot all stand by a minute saying one particular thing, then the clerk will sense that the meeting is not in unity and will minute that. And that may be held over to another date, or no decision is sometimes a decision in itself. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a decision made. But if there is going to be that, this is how we do it. So now I'm going to, having now talked to you almost pretty much through what a meeting for worship for business, what the etiquette, what the way of doing it is, I'm going to offer those of you who would like to a chance to put some bits of paper cards in order of how it would happen in a meeting for worship for business. Okay. I should have brought 2 sets of these, and then you could have done it in 2 groups, but I've only got one. So I'm just going to put them on the floor, and then those of you who would like to can get up and, as a group, decide what order you would like them to go in, what order they might happen in a meeting for worship for business. And Alan, don't look at the order that I've taken them out because
Could you read them out before?
yeah, I will. I'll read them out in a moment. So we've got questions for clarification. We've got agenda sent out, ministry heard, agenda item presented to the meeting, consultation with those presenting items, clerk discerns agenda items and order, minute accepted, sent to the meeting, clerk requests agenda items, minute drafted and offered, supporting papers sent out, ministry heard, item put before the meeting, and ministry heard. There was one other thing I do need to make clear actually, in case we don't get there. The minute that is written in the meeting and agreed by the meeting at the time belongs to the meeting. It is not the clerk's, it's not the clerk's minute, it belongs to the meeting and the meeting has to agree it. So it's not for the clerk to say, right, I've minted that, let's move on. It's for the clerk to offer a minute and for the meeting to agree it. So here's your cards. For those of you who would like to, have a go at putting them as a group in the right order, and we'll go through that in a minute. We'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And we will go through it in detail in the last 2.5 minutes when we finish. So I'll put them on the slide, shall I? And there isn't actually a 100% right answer.
Put them in order.
Oh, that's,
I'll put them in order.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
that we should work out what the items going in before you send it out.
Yeah.
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
That's the best of a stick. isn't it?
Exactly. They're not independent.
this one.
Agenda item presented.
No, can't do that.
Sorry, you might have damaged the table. Damage, yeah. Stop it. Before the ministry heard.
Agenda represented to the meeting, item put before the meeting. That's all it-
And then questions for clarification.
Where does that come? Oh, okay.
That, would this one not go before, no, it wouldn't. Item will put before consultation with those representing.
That should go somewhere in there,
That should
shouldn't it?
go somewhere near the beginning, shouldn't it? When you're doing
Are we number
the
two?
agenda.
Number 2,
Number 2.
after he's asked for the items, or she.
What, in between there and there?
Yeah. Questions for clarification after the ministry heard? And then more ministry heard?
So when does that go?
No, so we hear the ministry and then we get the sense of the meeting, don't we?
Not before the questions for clarification. That's what I was querying. whether
No,
that went in
because
first
if somebody does ministry and then somebody will say,
Yes.
what about such and such? But that is the whole meeting, whereas
Yeah,
that
exactly.
same person.
Okay.
So,
I'll just put that one first.
Minutes drafted and offered should.
well, sense of the meeting would be before we
Yes.
draft the
Yeah.
minute.
Yes, okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And that.
then they draft the minute.
For those who can't see,
Mm.
We'll move that.
we have started with clerk requests agenda items. And so what this says is that, it's lunchtime, what this says is that the agenda, although it's put together by the clerk, and the clerk, well, comes that, the agenda items also come from the meeting. Okay? So that's the first thing that happens. Some of this, there's no definite 100% right answer here, but then this next card is consultation with those presenting the items. So, for example, if you sent an agenda item to the clerk, you may have some supporting papers, you may have something you want to say about it, and the clerk will need to know that in order that they can discern the order in which the agenda goes and know what to expect in the meeting as well. So then the clerk will then discern what goes on the agenda or what's been offered. So sometimes things will come to the clerk and actually they go notices rather than going on the agenda for a meeting for worship business. And the other thing that's very important is the order in which the items come onto the agenda. So, for example, if you put 8 items, relatively trivial items, just the first 8 items, and then your big meaty one's the 9th, everybody would have gone home. So, you know, that faith in action item or that the thing that's been area meeting have asked you to do or whatever probably comes quite high up on the agenda. But that's for the clerk to discern. The agenda is then sent out with any supporting papers. In my experience, the supporting papers tend to come out rather later. Okay. Ideally, they go around at the same time. And then we come into the meeting for worship for business, and the first thing that happens is, so you've got it all right, by the way, so far. The agenda item is presented to the meeting.
First thing would be silent worship.
There would first be silent worship, you're absolutely right, thank you. So this session was one that somebody from Woodbrook did for us in our team the other day, and I've nicked it off, so I've nicked it off. I didn't write that, I had to do this in memory. So silent worship is, I will add another card that says silent worship. Once there has been silent worship, the agenda item is presented to the meeting. The next card that you've got is that the item is put before the meeting, and there's a difference between those two things. So it will be presented, the item is presented, and details given of what decision you're making or what the item's all about. And then you would probably get questions for clarification about the item, so that it's fully understood what you make your decision about. And actually, for the most effective discernment to happen, friends should have read all the papers in advance and be informed about the decisions that are being made. It's a mistake to think that you can rock up on a Sunday for the meeting for worship for business, not having read the agenda and all the agenda and the supporting papers, and discern effectively. You've got to know, it's not magic. It kind of is, but not really. So after the agenda item is presented, there'll be questions for clarification. And then the clerk will put the item before the meeting. So that's a different thing. It's the items before you, friends. And that's the point at which you would hear the first ministry. And there would be ministry and further ministry and what have you, until, so you have ministry head, but it's only one really. And then you start to get sent to the meeting, and the clerk will be listening deeply to the ministry. It's unlikely that the clerk will be offering ministry themselves. Their role is to hear what's being said by the meeting and to get a sense of that. So the clerk might say, I'm getting a sense that whatever, at which point there would probably be further ministry, or there might be further ministry. Then the clerk would draft the minute, at which point you would uphold them, pray like mad, and it is offered to the meeting as a minute, as the meeting's minute, and you would then, you might actually then, oh goodness me, then there's an opportunity for further ministry. However, at this stage, once the minute has been offered, you would not expect to offer ministry that brings something else into the decision or into the minute. You would only be offering ministry on what was in the minute. So you might say, for example, actually, I don't think we didn't hear that wasn't quite what we heard. Could you put in this phrase which came out of the ministry? Or you might say, actually, would that bit at the bottom do better a bit further up the minute? So you would be ministering on the minute, not on the item, if that makes sense. And then, lo and behold, miraculously, the minute is then accepted by the meeting. Because the meeting is the meeting. Tony, then.
Go on.
Go on.
Sorry. I'm sorry to be asking so many questions.
I'm delighted that you're asking questions.
Could you define the word ministry?
Anybody want to do that?
What has been discerned within, from the light within?
Are there any religious connotations in the word ministry?
Yes.
Yes.
My understanding of ministry, if I am offering ministry, my sense when I'm speaking or acting, because sometimes ministry is active, but in this case, spoken ministry, is it comes through me. It isn't from me, it's through me. Yeah.
Even if you're asking questions about the toilets,
Well, this is the questions for clarification bit.
well, that's still ministry, is it?
No, not really. Not really. That's why the ministry comes once the item has been put before the meeting, and that would be a kind of that's where faith practice comes in, and you put aside your own personal feelings, if you like, and wait to be led to.
So is there an alternative word for ministry that you could use?
What do you think?
Readings.
Because this is presumably a meeting about the fabric of the building or whatever.
It's back to advice and queries number 1. Listen to the promptings of truth and love in your heart. Trust them as the leadings of God, whose light leads us from the darkness and into new life. That's the first advice and queries. So they're the leadings of God. Listen.
So there are strong religious connotations in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're the
It's-
religious.
it's-
We are the
We're
religious.
still worshipping.
We are the Religious Society of Friends, and it is a meeting for worship for business.
Well, you didn't say that originally.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You're dead.
I think I did. It is a meeting for worship for business. It's not a business meeting. It's a meeting for worship for business.
Can I suggest that the word ministry also carries connotations of service?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Service to the meeting?
Absolutely. Woodbrook used to run a program of learning called Equipping for Ministry, which I did. When I first heard it, I'm like, why do you need 2 years to learn how to speak in a meeting? But of course, it's not about that. It's what your life, what you're led to do in your life. And actually, what I discovered was it was about equipping, not the ministry. But Amy, did you have a
Why
question?
do we say I hope so?
Oh, another fantastic question. It comes from, I hope we have discerned the will of God. Thank you.
And remember, you may be wrong.
Consider you may be mistaken.
mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great advice and query. I've forgotten your name already, sorry. Dawn. Sorry, Dawn.
Are we addressing each other as friends when you give ministry at this meeting?
That's a good question, which leads me on to answer a different one. I think formally, yes, you would. If you're in for example, the yearly meeting, it's not like in here where you'll know each other. The names aren't known, so the clerk will say our friend in the North Block or whatever. But what it reminds me, what we haven't said, is that when you minister in a meeting for worship for business, you're not talking to your mate next to you. You're talking to you're speaking to the meeting too. You're speaking to the table, if you like. What other meeting might with the chair, but you're speaking to the table. You're speaking to the whole meeting. You're not addressing. You're not having a conversation with somebody over there. You're speaking to the table.
You're speaking to the light, really, aren't you? Whatever you want to call God.
Yeah.
It's who you're speaking to.
In practical terms, you are speaking to the whole meeting. You are, and the other thing you're doing is you're not responding directly to somebody else's ministry. So if someone says, I think the toilet should be painted blue, it's not helpful to jump up and say, well, I think they should be red. It's.
What do we do if the item is before the meeting and nothing's said?
It depends what the item is. If it's an item that needs a decision, then you just wait, won't you? You can't wait forever. And if you wait for as long as you feel as clerk is long enough, you can then say, friends, I'm going to try a minute. The item is presented to the meeting, and friends are not ready to make a decision.
And should it be that every minute should be agreed by the meeting? So when you say, it's before your friends, I hope that means acceptable for everyone. People do have to affirm that by saying, I hope so.
No, actually, if nobody says anything, that's acceptance of the minute.
Is it?
Yeah. We've got very hung up on saying I hope so, but it's.
So if no one said no, it's carried.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carried is not a
Sorry.
word.
Sorry, no, sorry.
If no one objects, then it stands. Let's say it stands. Okay, I'm aware that it's nearly 1:10. You must all be starving. But I'm wrap up when you're ready. So tell me.
To what extent is it appropriate for the clerk to? I'm not quite sure how to have input. Let's put it that way.
Usually, you would expect clerk not to have input
Right.
into the actual decision. And actually, do you know that is the joy of being clerk. That's what I really enjoyed about being clerk, because I've always got something to say. And it was actually really quite a relief in some ways, to sit back and hear what was happening in the meeting and not to be part of that. You can't do that if you feel like you're able to speak. I don't think, my experience.
That's what the supporting documents are for, isn't it? The clerk can get their point of view over sort of thing.
Well,
what I mean is that they can put documents in, giving both sides of something, and if it's the meeting, then to sort it out.
Yeah, the skill of the clerk is to make sure that friends have all the information they need in order to make a decision.
That's why it doesn't need to input.
We probably should wrap up there. I'm more than happy to answer any more questions over lunch. I'm not in any hurry to be off, so I'll answer any further questions. Is that helpful? Is there anything burning that needs to be asked before we have lunch?
I've got one.
Go on.
After all these decisions have been made, who does the work?
Do you know, you've got all those fantastic questions. Another great question. I think it's really important for friends to understand that if they're saying, let's do this, in reality, you should not be saying, yes, let's do this if you're not prepared to do it yourself. It's no point in a meeting that they want to open the meeting house to refugees 3 times a week and cook them a meal and advertise it everywhere if no one's willing to do it. And I think that's a really key point for meetings. And I've certainly I used to be in a meeting where we had one person who was really enthusiastic, saying, the meeting ought to do this, the meeting ought to do that, the meeting ought to do the other. And everyone, oh yeah, great idea, let's do that. And then she was the one who ended up doing all the work, because actually, in reality, the meeting was like, oh yeah, great, come and do that. And it didn't work. You've got to be considering that when you're making the decision. And the decision might be, we'd love to open the meeting house refugees 3 times a week and cook them all meal 18 times. And at the moment, we're not able to do that.
That's the decision we took on warm space, wasn't it? It'd be a really good idea, but
in reality,
it's not
Don't have the personnel.
Can't often bring draft minutes to the meeting.
You do. because otherwise you really would be there all day.
I've had that complaint, yes.
Yes, yeah. Was there a question behind
Well,
that?
it's, where does that
I've missed it out.
you've got, minutes being drafted quite late on in the process.
So, that's another card I need to add. Probably here. So after the agenda's been sent out, in preparation for the meeting, the likelihood is that the clerk drafts minutes. That's not to say the clerk has decided what the decision will be and is going to present that minute regardless. It means that they have considered what might come up, they have thought about it, they have put some words around it. They might draft minute two different decisions, and what actually happens is a third thing entirely. But it just saves a little bit of time, it then saves a little bit of thinking space for the clerk. It does mean that they've done their preparation. Increasingly, especially area meeting level, I see clerks sending out draft minutes, but they tend to be things like minutes of record or things like, we heard a membership report for so-and-so, the meeting, ... So they don't tend to be the decisions, they tend to be the bones around, that will flesh around, what might happen. Yes, I'll put that on there actually, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, as usual. Excellent stuff. Really great.
Anytime, and as I say, I'm open for questions, and if you remember anything afterwards, and various people have got my email address. I won't be answering any emails until next week, because I'm off to see my sister in Switzerland tomorrow. So.